The first time Elias Novak saw the reset button, he thought it was a joke. Who would place such an ominous-looking red button in the middle of one of the most advanced cosmic microengineering facilities in the galaxy? It had to be someone's idea of humor. Probably Dr. Ramsey with his penchant for retro Earth culture. "Hey, what's with the Doomsday button?" Elias asked, pointing at the sleek panel embedded in the central command console. The button glowed with an internal red light, protected by a clear safety cover that seemed to invite rather than deter curious fingers. Dr. Sophia Ramsey looked up from her quantum calculations and adjusted her holographic display. "Oh, that? It's part of the new temporal calibration system. The higher-ups insisted we install it after the Cygnus incident." "The Cygnus incident?" Elias shuddered. 6 months ago, a relatively minor calculation error had caused a temporal anomaly that wiped out 3 days of history on a remote mining colony. Nobody had died. Technically, they had never existed in the first place. But the ethical implications had thrown the scientific community into chaos. So it actually works? It can reset time. Elias moved closer to examine the button. His reflection distorted in the glossy surface of the safety cover. "In theory," Sophia replied, her attention already drifting back to her work. "It's designed to revert localized temporal anomalies by creating a controlled chronometric pulse. But I wouldn't mess with it. The technology is still experimental." Elias nodded, though his curiosity remained piqued. At 29, he was the youngest cosmic engineer at the Transtemporal Research Division. And his insatiable curiosity was both his greatest strength and his most dangerous weakness. He had earned his position through brilliance and intuition rather than experience, a fact that some of his colleagues never let him forget. The Transtemporal Research Division occupied a sprawling complex orbiting Earth's moon, a shimmering construct of crystalline alloys and quantum-stabilized materials that seemed to shimmer in and out of reality depending on the angle of observation. Here, the boundaries between science and miracle blurred as researchers pushed the limits of what was possible with matter, energy, and time itself. Elias turned away from the button and resumed his work, calibrating the quantum algorithms that would help stabilize a particularly problematic area of space-time near Alpha Centauri. The work was precise and demanding, requiring his complete concentration. Yet, he found his gaze occasionally drifting back to the reset button. Just knowing it was there changed something in the atmosphere of the lab. 3 weeks later, Elias had almost forgotten about the button. His team had been tasked with an urgent mission to prevent a cosmic string from unraveling near a heavily populated sector. The work was grueling, the pressure immense, and sleep had become a luxury none of them could afford. "The quantum fluctuations are increasing," warned Kai, their quantum computer specialist. His fingers danced across holographic interfaces, struggling to keep pace with the cascading failures in their stabilization field. "If we don't contain this in the next 4 minutes, we're looking at a catastrophic collapse of the local space-time continuum. Reroute power from the auxiliary systems," Elias ordered, his voice steady despite the panic threatening to overwhelm him. "Sophia, can you strengthen the chronometric shield?" Dr. Sophia Ramsey shook her head, her face pale. "The shield generators are already at 120% capacity. Any more and they'll burn out completely. Then we need to think of something else," Elias muttered, his mind racing through possible solutions, each one more desperate than the last. It was then that his gaze fell on the reset button, its red glow seeming brighter in the emergency lighting that bathed the lab. A desperate idea began to form. "What if we use the reset button?" he suggested, looking around at his colleagues. If it can revert temporal anomalies, maybe it can reset the quantum fluctuations to a more stable state. Are you insane? Kai exclaimed, looking up from his workstation. That technology is untested on this scale. We have no idea what might happen. We don't have time for a debate, Elias insisted, moving toward the central console. In 3 minutes, that cosmic string will unravel completely, and we'll lose an entire sector of space. Millions of lives. Kai, millions. Sophia stepped between Elias and the console, her expression grave. Elias, think about what you're proposing. The reset button was designed for localized anomalies, not something of this magnitude. The repercussions could be catastrophic. More catastrophic than losing millions of lives, Elias countered, his voice rising. We have a responsibility to at least try. 2 minutes until critical failure. The facility's AI announced in its unnervingly calm voice. Sophia hesitated, then stepped aside. I hope you know what you're doing. Elias approached the console, his heart pounding in his chest. He lifted the safety cover, revealing the button in all its ominous glory. His finger hovered above it as doubt crept into his mind. What if Sophia was right? What if the cure was worse than the disease? 1 minute until critical failure. No time for doubt. No time for second guessing. Elias pressed the button. There was a moment of absolute stillness, as if the universe itself had taken a breath. Then came a flash of light, so intense that it seemed to burn through Elias's closed eyelids, searing his retinas despite the advanced protective measures built into the facility. When he could see again, Elias found himself still standing at the console, his finger on the button. But something was wrong. The emergency lighting had disappeared. The alarms had fallen silent. And his colleagues? Elias turned around to find an empty lab. No Sophia, no Kai, no frantic researchers battling against time. Just empty workstations and the soft hum of equipment in standby mode. Hello? He called out, his voice echoing in the vast space. Sophia? Kai? Anyone? The facility's AI responded, its voice emanating from everywhere and nowhere. Good morning, Engineer Novak. How may I assist you today? Where is everyone? Elias demanded, a cold dread settling in his stomach. I do not understand the question. Please clarify. My team, Elias insisted, striding toward the main view screen. Dr. Ramsey, Kai Lin, the rest of the research division. Where are they? I have no records of these individuals in my database. The AI replied, You are currently the only authorized personnel present in the facility. Elias froze, the implications of the AI's words washing over him like ice water. With trembling hands, he activated the main view screen, calling up an exterior view of the facility. What he saw made his knees buckle. Where Earth's moon should have been, there was nothing but an empty void. No Earth, no solar system, just an endless expanse of stars against the black canvas of space. Different stars than he remembered, arranged in unfamiliar patterns. Computer, he whispered, his voice barely audible even to himself. What is the current date and location? The current date is indeterminate, the AI responded. Location data is currently unavailable. Elias stumbled to a nearby chair, collapsing into it as the magnitude of what had happened began to dawn on him. The reset button hadn't just reverted the quantum fluctuations. It had somehow erased everything. What have I done? He murmured, staring at his hands as if they belonged to someone else. What have I done? Days passed, or what felt like days. Time had become a nebulous concept in this strange new reality. Elias roamed the empty facility, trying to understand what had happened and, more importantly, if there was any way to fix it. The facility itself seemed unchanged, its systems functioning normally despite the absence of the world it had been built to study and protect. Food synthesizers still produced meals. Environmental systems maintained a comfortable atmosphere. And the AI responded to his commands with the same infuriating calm. But beyond the transparent walls of the facility, the universe had transformed into something unrecognizable. Stars flickered in and out of existence. Nebulae formed and dissipated in the span of hours. And occasionally, Elias would catch glimpses of structures that defied explanation. Geometric patterns of light that seemed to fold in on themselves. Vast shadows that moved with purpose through the void. He had taken to keeping a journal, partly to maintain his sanity and partly to document the inexplicable phenomena he observed. The physical act of writing helped anchor him to reality, or what passed for reality in this new existence. Day 7, I think. He wrote, "The reset button has disappeared from the console. I don't know if it was ever really there or if I imagined it. But the effects are undeniable. I've erased the universe, or at least transformed it into something I can't comprehend. I keep hoping this is some kind of elaborate simulation, a test or a dream, but with each passing moment, that hope fades a little more." He closed the journal and turned his attention to the main computer terminal. He had been systematically combing through the facility's databases, looking for any information that might help him understand what had happened or how to reverse it. "Computer, access temporal mechanics research files," he commanded. "Access denied." The AI responded. "Those files are restricted." Elias frowned. This was new. He had encountered no restrictions before. Override restriction, authorization Novak Alpha 79. Authorization accepted, the AI acknowledged after a brief pause. Accessing temporal mechanics research files. The holographic display filled with data, equations, diagrams, experimental logs. Elias leaned forward, his exhaustion temporarily forgotten as he absorbed the information. The reset button, it seemed, had not been designed merely to revert temporal anomalies. Its true purpose was far more ambitious and far more dangerous. It was part of a classified project called Universal Recalibration, an attempt to create a failsafe that could reset the entire universe to a predetermined state in case of a catastrophic event that threatened all existence. But the technology was fundamentally flawed. The theory behind it was sound, but the practical application had never been successfully tested. The researchers had theorized that using the button might not reset the universe to a previous state, but could instead create an entirely new reality, one shaped by the subconscious desires and fears of the person who activated it. "That's impossible," Elias muttered, scrolling through the data. Consciousness can't directly influence reality on that scale. Yet the evidence suggested otherwise. The strange phenomena he had been observing, the shifting stars, the impossible structures, all seemed to correlate with thoughts and emotions he had experienced just before noticing them. "Computer, who authorized Project Universal Recalibration?" he asked. "Project Universal Recalibration was authorized by Director Marcus Vega on stardate 2387.4, the AI responded. Elias's blood ran cold. Marcus Vega had been the director of the Trans-Temporal Research Division 50 years ago. The project predated him by half a century. "Computer, display all personnel files for Project Universal Recalibration." The display changed, showing a list of names and portraits. Elias scanned them quickly, looking for familiar faces, but found none. Until he reached the last entry. Engineer Elias Novak, he read aloud, staring at his own image on the screen. Primary test subject. That's not possible, he whispered, backing away from the terminal. I never participated in this project. I didn't even know about it until now. Yet there was his face, his name, in files created decades before he was born. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts, signaling an incoming transmission. Elias froze. There had been no communications since he pressed the button. Who could possibly be contacting him in this empty universe? Computer, identify the source of the transmission, he ordered, his voice shaking slightly. Source unknown, the AI replied. Signal appears to originate from within the facility. That's impossible. Display the message. The holographic display flickered and resolved into a simple text message. You're not alone. Meet me in Lab 7. S. Sophia? Could she have somehow survived the reset? Or was this another manifestation of his increasingly fragile psyche? There was only one way to find out. Lab 7 was located in the eastern wing of the facility, an area Elias had avoided in his explorations due to its distance from the central hub. As he made his way there, he couldn't shake the feeling that he was being watched, that the empty corridors contained more than just shadows and silence. The door to Lab 7 was ajar, a sliver of blue light spilling out into the corridor. Elias approached cautiously, his heart pounding in his chest. Hello? He called out, pushing the door open wider. Is anyone there? The lab was dimly lit, most of its equipment powered down. In the center of the room stood a figure, their back to Elias, silhouetted against a holographic display showing a complex mathematical equation. Sophia? Elias ventured, taking a step into the room. Is that you? The figure turned, and Elias gasped. It wasn't Sophia. It wasn't anyone he recognized. It wasn't even human. The being before him had a vaguely humanoid form, but its features were fluid, shifting between different configurations like a reflection in disturbed water. Its skin, if it could be called that, shimmered with an internal light that cast prismatic patterns on the surrounding surfaces. Hello, Elias, the being said, its voice resonating on multiple frequencies simultaneously. I've been waiting for you. Elias backed toward the door, his mind reeling. Who? What are you? A friend, the being replied, making no move to approach him. Or at least, not an enemy. You can call me Sentinel. Sentinel, Elias repeated, his scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. Are you real, or am I hallucinating? The being, Sentinel, made a sound that might have been laughter. Reality is more flexible than you realize, especially now. But yes, I am as real as you are. More real, in some ways. What do you mean? And how do you know my name? I know many things about you. Elias Novak. I know that you pressed the reset button. I know that you're trying to understand what happened. And I know that you're afraid. Elias swallowed hard, his throat suddenly dry. What happened when I pressed the button? Where is everyone? Where is Earth? Sentinel gestured toward the holographic display, which shifted to show a visualization of the universe, not as a static model, but as a living, breathing entity, pulsing with energy and information. The reset button did exactly what it was designed to do. Sentinel explained. It reset the universe. but not to a previous state. It erased everything and started anew. That's not possible, Elias protested. One button can't erase an entire universe. Not under normal circumstances, no. But the button was connected to a network of quantum-entangled particles distributed throughout known space. When activated, it created a cascading effect that rewrote the fundamental laws of reality. Elias shook his head, struggling to comprehend. But why would anyone create such a thing? The risks. The creators believed the benefits outweighed the risks. Sentinel replied. They feared an eventual heat death of the universe, or a catastrophic collapse of the quantum vacuum. The button was meant to be a last resort, a way to ensure that something would survive even if everything else perished. And now, Elias asked, gesturing toward the empty space beyond the facility's walls. Is this all that's left? For now. Sentinel confirmed. But the universe is not static. It's rebuilding itself, using the only template it has available. What template? You, Elias, your memories, your knowledge, your imagination. The new universe is shaping itself around your consciousness. The implications struck Elias like a physical blow. You're saying I'm creating a new reality? Not consciously, no. But your mind is providing the framework. That's why the facility still exists, why the AI recognizes you, why you found those files about Project Universal Recalibration. Your subconscious is trying to make sense of what happened by creating a narrative you can understand. Elias sank into a nearby chair, his legs no longer able to support him. So, none of this is real? I'm just hallucinating an entire universe? It's real. Sentinel assured him, as real as the universe that existed before, just different, incomplete, evolving. And you? What are you in all this? Sentinel's form shifted, becoming more defined, yet somehow less comprehensible. I am a guardian, a failsafe within the failsafe. I exist to guide whoever activates the reset button, to prevent them from being lost in the void between realities. There have been others? Other resets? No. Sentinel admitted. You are the first. This is uncharted territory for all of us. The weight of responsibility settled on Elias's shoulders like a physical burden. He had not only erased the universe, but was now somehow responsible for creating a new one. The implications were too vast, too terrifying to fully comprehend. What happens now? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Now, Sentinel replied, we rebuild. The process of rebuilding a universe, it turned out, was not a straightforward task. In the days that followed his meeting with Sentinel, Elias struggled to understand the extent of his influence over the new reality. His conscious attempts to reshape the world around him met with limited success. He could make small changes to his immediate environment, altering the color of a wall, changing the temperature of a room. But larger transformations required more effort and often resulted in unexpected side effects. It's like trying to lucid dream, he explained to Sentinel during one of their sessions in Lab 7. I can control things up to a point, but then my subconscious takes over and everything goes sideways. Your mind was not designed to create universes, Sentinel pointed out. It's formed today resembling a complex geometric pattern that shifted and rotated in ways that hurt Elias's eyes if he looked too directly at it. You're doing remarkably well considering the circumstances, but it's not enough. Elias insisted, frustration evident in his voice. At this rate, it will take centuries to recreate even a fraction of what was lost. And I don't think I have centuries. Indeed, the strain of continually shaping reality was taking its toll. Elias had begun experiencing severe headaches, episodes of disorientation, and increasingly vivid hallucinations that blurred the line between imagination and the new reality. Perhaps you're approaching this from the wrong angle. Sentinel suggested. Instead of trying to recreate the old universe in its entirety, focus on establishing the fundamental laws and constants. Let the details emerge naturally. Like setting up initial conditions and letting evolution take its course? Precisely. Your consciousness can provide the framework, but the universe itself must grow and develop according to its own internal logic. The idea had merit. Elias began spending hours in the facility's main observatory, meditating on the basic principles that had governed the previous universe: the speed of light, the gravitational constant, the behavior of quantum particles. He visualized these concepts not as abstract mathematical formulas, but as living, breathing aspects of reality, interconnected and interdependent. Gradually, the chaotic void beyond the facility began to stabilize. Stars settled into more predictable patterns, their light steadier and more consistent. Occasionally, Elias would glimpse what appeared to be planetary bodies forming in distant systems, matter coalescing from the cosmic dust that permeated the new universe. But progress brought new challenges. As the universe expanded and complexified, Elias found himself increasingly unable to keep track of all its aspects. Regions of space would develop in unexpected ways, sometimes spawning phenomena that defied the laws of physics as he understood them. "It's slipping away from me," he confessed to Sentinel after a particularly exhausting session. "The further it expands, the less control I have." "That's natural," Sentinel assured him. "A universe is too complex for any single consciousness to micromanage. The important thing is that you've established a stable foundation. The rest will follow its own path." "But what if that path leads to another catastrophe? What if I've created something fundamentally flawed?" Sentinel's form shimmered, contracting into a more humanoid shape that reminded Elias of Sophia. "All creation involves risk, Elias. The previous universe was not perfect, yet it produced wonders beyond imagination, including you. The reminder of what had been lost, his friends, his world, the countless civilizations that had flourished across the cosmos, sent a fresh wave of grief through Elias. Despite Sentinel's assurances, he couldn't shake the feeling that he had committed an unforgivable act. "I need to find a way to bring it all back," he insisted. "There has to be a way to reverse what I've done, to restore the original universe, even if such a thing were possible." Sentinel countered. "Would it be right? This new universe already exists. It's developing its own unique properties, its own potential for life and consciousness. Would you erase it to restore another?" The question struck at the heart of Elias's dilemma. He had already erased one universe. Could he justify doing so again, even to restore what had been lost? "I don't know," he admitted. "I just know that I can't live with myself if I don't at least try to fix my mistake." "Then perhaps," Sentinel suggested, "you should look for a third option, not erasure, not acceptance, but something in between." Before Elias could respond, the facility's alarms blared to life, their urgent wailing echoing through the observatory. "Warning," the AI announced. "Spatial anomaly detected in Sector 7. Unknown entities approaching the facility." Elias rushed to the main view screen, calling up a visual of the designated sector. What he saw defied explanation. A swirling vortex had appeared in the void, its edges defined by crackling energy that shifted between colors Elias had no names for. And emerging from this vortex were ships, constructs, living entities. He couldn't tell. They moved with purpose, their sleek forms cutting through space with unnatural precision. "What are they?" he asked, turning to Sentinel. But Sentinel had changed, its form now rigid, alert, its prismatic colors dimmed to a uniform silver. "They should not exist," it said, its multi-toned voice now a single, urgent frequency. "They are outside." "Outside? Outside what?" "Outside the reset, beyond your influence. They come from elsewhere." A cold dread settled in Elias's stomach. "Are they dangerous?" "I don't know." Sentinel admitted. "This has never happened before. The reset was supposed to be absolute, encompassing all of existence. Nothing should have survived. Yet something had, and it was heading straight for them." "Computer," Elias called out. "Initiate defensive protocols, raise shields and prepare for possible hostile contact." "Acknowledged," the AI responded. "Shields activated. Defense systems online." Elias watched as the unknown entities drew closer. Their movements synchronized with an eerie precision. There were 7 of them, each slightly different in form, but clearly of the same origin. They arranged themselves in a perfect circle around the facility, maintaining a distance just beyond what Elias estimated to be weapons range. "They're surrounding us," he observed, his voice tense. "Sentinel, any insights?" Sentinel moved to stand beside him, its form now resembling a metallic, humanoid figure. "They're scanning us, assessing. I can feel their curiosity. Curiosity is good, right? Better than hostility." "Perhaps, but curiosity can be dangerous when the curious are powerful enough to destroy what they don't understand." As if in response to Sentinel's words, one of the entities detached from the formation and moved closer to the facility. It was smaller than the others, its form more fluid, almost organic in its movements. "Incoming transmission," the AI announced. "Unknown format. Attempting to translate." The main view screen flickered, then filled with a series of symbols that shifted and changed too quickly for Elias to follow. The symbols were accompanied by sounds, not speech as he understood it, but a complex symphony of tones and harmonics that seemed to bypass his ears and resonate directly in his mind. "I can't understand it," he said, wincing as the sounds intensified. "Computer, can you translate?" "Negative." The AI responded. "The language structure does not match any known linguistic patterns." Sentinel stepped forward, its form glowing brighter. "I will attempt communication," it said, and then emitted a series of similar tones and harmonics. The effect was immediate. The entity retreated slightly, and the transmission ceased. A moment of tense silence followed. Then a new transmission began, simpler, slower, the symbols remaining static long enough for Elias to attempt to discern patterns. "It's adjusting," Sentinel explained. "Trying to find a mode of communication we can comprehend." Gradually, the symbols began to resolve into recognizable shapes, crude approximations of letters and numbers, arranged in sequences that almost made sense. The accompanying sounds mellowed into something closer to human speech, though still layered with harmonics that tugged at the edges of Elias's perception. "Hello?" a voice finally said, the word distorted but recognizable. "You are Creator?" Elias glanced at Sentinel, who nodded encouragingly. I suppose I am," he responded cautiously. Who are you? We are survivors. The voice replied, from before the great change. We felt the universe shift. We followed the ripples to their source. Survivors. The word echoed in Elias's mind, igniting a spark of hope he had thought extinguished. You survived the reset. How many of you are there? Few, came the response. Very few. We existed between. When reality collapsed, we were sheltered in the void between dimensions. But we felt the loss. Everything we knew, gone. The accusation was implicit. And Elias felt the weight of his guilt increase exponentially. Not only had he erased his own world, but countless others across dimensions he hadn't even known existed. I'm sorry, he said, the words wholly inadequate. I didn't know what would happen. I was trying to prevent a disaster, not cause one. We understand. Desperation. The voice acknowledged. We too have faced extinction, but now we face uncertainty. This new reality is unstable, shaped by your thoughts, your fears. It threatens our existence. What do you want from me? Elias asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. Restore, the voice demanded. Return what was taken, or we will be forced to intervene. Elias turned to Sentinel, who remained unnaturally still. Can it be done? Can the original universe be restored? Not without consequences. Sentinel warned. This new universe has already begun to develop its own complexity, its own potential. Erasing it would be no less a crime than what has already occurred. But if these survivors are right, if the new reality is unstable, then we must stabilize it. Sentinel insisted, not destroy it. Elias turned back to the view screen, his mind racing. I need time, he told the entity. Time to understand what happened, to find a solution that doesn't involve more destruction. The entity was silent for a long moment, its form shifting in what might have been contemplation. Time is limited, it finally responded. The new reality grows more fixed with each passing moment. Soon, restoration will be impossible. How much time can you give me? 1 cycle of your star. The entity declared, after that, we must act to preserve what remains of our existence. 1 cycle, presumably 1 rotation of the facility around its nearest star, which Elias estimated to be approximately 30 Earth days. Not much time to solve a problem of universal proportions. I accept your terms, he said, hoping his voice conveyed more confidence than he felt. In 1 cycle, I will have a solution. The entity retreated, rejoining its companions in their perfect circle around the facility. The transmission ended, leaving Elias and Sentinel alone with the enormity of their task. Well, Elias said, attempting a grim smile. No pressure. Sentinel's form shifted, contracting into a concentrated point of light before expanding back into its humanoid shape. There might be a way, it said slowly, not to restore the old universe or to preserve this one unchanged, but to merge them, to create a synthesis of what was and what is becoming. Is that even possible? In theory, the reset didn't truly destroy the original universe. It converted its energy and information into a new form. With the right approach, some of that information could be recovered and integrated into the current reality. Hope and skepticism warred within Elias. And what would the result be? Some kind of hybrid universe? Something new? Sentinel confirmed. something that has never existed before, a reality shaped not just by your consciousness, but by the collective memory of all that was lost, including the survivors. It was a terrifying prospect, but also strangely exhilarating. Not a return to the past, not an acceptance of an unstable present, but a leap into an unknown future. A future that might contain echoes of all that had been precious in the original universe. "What do we need to do?" Elias asked, his resolve hardening. "First," Sentinel replied, "we need to understand exactly what the reset button did. And for that, we need to go to the source. The source, as it turned out, was not the button itself, which had indeed disappeared from the console, but a chamber deep beneath the facility, accessible only through a series of maintenance tunnels that Elias had never known existed. The facility is much larger than you realize." Sentinel explained as they descended through narrow passages that seemed to bend in ways that defied ordinary spatial geometry. "What you see is merely the surface structure. The true heart of the Transtemporal Research Division lies below." "How do you know all this?" Elias asked, struggling to keep pace with Sentinel's gliding form. "You said the reset had never been activated before." "I was created to guide the activator," Sentinel reminded him. "That includes knowledge of the facility and its functions, knowledge that was hidden from even the highest-ranking personnel." They emerged into a vast circular chamber, its walls lined with technology unlike anything Elias had seen before. Crystalline structures pulsed with internal light, connected by filaments that seemed to phase in and out of reality. In the center of the chamber stood a pedestal, and on that pedestal, the button. Elias breathed, approaching cautiously. "But I thought it disappeared." "What you saw in the control room was merely an interface," Sentinel explained. "This is the true reset mechanism, the heart of Project Universal Recalibration. The button here was different, larger, more elaborate, surrounded by a complex array of instruments and displays. It no longer glowed red, but instead shimmered with a pearlescent light that shifted through the entire spectrum as Elias watched. "Can we use it again?" he asked. "To implement this merger you suggested?" "Not directly. The mechanism was designed for a single use, but we can access its memory, understand the exact nature of the transformation it enacted. That knowledge will be essential for our attempt to reshape reality once more." Sentinel approached the pedestal, extending a limb that morphed into something resembling a data probe. As it connected with the mechanism, the entire chamber hummed with energy, and the displays around the button flared to life, showing a cascade of information too complex for Elias to interpret. "Yes," Sentinel murmured, its voice reverberating strangely in the chamber. "I can see it now. The pattern of the reset, the way it rewrote the fundamental constants. And something else, something unexpected." "What is it?" Elias asked, stepping closer despite his instinctive caution. The reset was not complete. Sentinel revealed, withdrawing its probe. The button failed to erase a significant portion of the quantum information that comprised the original universe. That information still exists, preserved in a state of quantum superposition within the fabric of this new reality. And that's why the survivors were able to find us, because they could follow this residual information. Precisely. And it's also why this new universe is unstable. It's attempting to integrate two fundamentally different sets of physical laws. Elias paced around the pedestal, his mind racing with implications. So if we can find a way to deliberately merge these two sets of information to create a coherent whole, then we might be able to stabilize this reality while preserving aspects of the original universe. Sentinel confirmed. But it would require a level of quantum manipulation beyond anything attempted before. The survivors, Elias suggested. They must have some understanding of interdimensional physics if they were able to survive in the void between realities. Could they help? Perhaps. But can they be trusted? Their priority is their own survival, not the well-being of this new universe. It was a valid concern. But Elias saw little choice. We need them, he insisted. And they need us. If this new reality collapses completely, they lose their last connection to existence. That gives us common ground. Sentinel's form flickered, suggesting uncertainty. Very well, but we must approach with caution, and we will need more than just their assistance. We will need a focal point, a nexus through which the quantum information of both realities can be channeled and harmonized. And what would that be? Sentinel's form contracted again, this time resolving into a mirror image of Elias himself. You, it said simply, the one who activated the reset, the consciousness that shaped this new reality. You are the bridge between what was and what will be. The implications sent a chill through Elias. What exactly are you suggesting? Your consciousness must serve as the conduit through which the merger occurs. You will need to enter a state of quantum entanglement with both the residual information of the original universe and the evolving pattern of the new one. And what happens to me in this process? Sentinel hesitated, its mirrored form rippling slightly. I don't know, it admitted. Nothing like this has ever been attempted. You might survive unchanged, or you might be transformed in ways I cannot predict. Or I might not survive at all. Elias finished for it. The risk is significant. Sentinel acknowledged. But so is the potential reward. A stable reality that preserves the best aspects of both universes. A second chance for existence itself. The weight of the decision pressed down on Elias like a physical force. Once again, he found himself at a crossroads, with the fate of everything hanging in the balance. But this time, he had more information, more understanding of the consequences. I'll do it, he said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through him. But first, we need to speak with the survivors. If I'm going to risk my existence for this plan, I want to be certain it has a chance of success. Communicating with the survivors proved more challenging than anticipated. Despite their earlier exchange, establishing a stable dialogue required several attempts, with Sentinel serving as an intermediary between Elias's human thought patterns and the alien's incomprehensible cognitive structure. They exist in multiple states simultaneously. Sentinel explained after a particularly frustrating session. Their consciousness is distributed across several quantum realities. It makes linear communication difficult. But gradually, a mutual understanding began to emerge. The survivors, who called themselves the Continuum, or something that translated approximately to that concept, possessed knowledge that complemented Sentinel's in crucial ways. They understood the nature of the void between realities, the mechanics of quantum superposition on a universal scale. And most importantly, they had developed techniques for preserving consciousness across dimensional shifts. They believe your plan is viable, Sentinel reported after a lengthy exchange. But they warn that the process will be more complex than we anticipated. The merger must occur simultaneously across all quantum states, or the resulting reality will be fatally flawed. How do we ensure that? Elias asked. trying to wrap his mind around concepts that seemed to exist at the very edge of comprehensibility. The continuum has offered to create a quantum scaffold, a temporary structure that will hold the merging realities in alignment during the critical phase. But they require something in return. What do they want? Assurance that the merged reality will include stable pockets of void space where their kind can exist, regions where the laws of physics are flexible enough to accommodate their unique nature. It seemed a reasonable request, though Elias worried about the long-term implications of creating such zones. Would these regions be isolated? Or would they pose a risk to the rest of the universe? They would be self-contained, existing in parallel with the main reality, but not interacting with it except at designated nexus points. Think of them as embassies between dimensions. Elias considered this, then nodded. Agreed. What else do we need for this plan to work? A focal point for the merger. Sentinel reminded him. A physical location where the quantum scaffold can be anchored and through which your consciousness can interface with both realities. The chamber with the reset mechanism. Yes, the technology there was designed to manipulate reality on a fundamental level. With modifications, it can serve our purpose. But there's one more component we need. What's that? A quantum duplicate of your consciousness. Sentinel said. A backup, if you will. In case the primary consciousness is lost or corrupted during the merger. The implication was clear. The process might destroy Elias's mind, erase his identity completely. The backup would preserve some version of him. But would it truly be him? Or just a copy, a shadow of his original self? How would this duplicate be created? He asked, trying to keep the fear from his voice. The continuum has a method. Sentinel explained. A form of quantum scanning that captures the exact state of your neural patterns at a specific moment in time. The copy would be stored in a stable quantum matrix until needed. And if it's not needed? If I survive the merger? Then the duplicate would be reintegrated with your primary consciousness, enriching rather than replacing it. It was a small comfort, but better than nothing. All right, Elias agreed. Let's proceed with the preparations. The next week passed in as a blur of feverish activity. The continuum provided detailed specifications for the quantum scaffold, which Elias and Sentinel worked to implement using the facility's advanced fabrication systems. The reset chamber was modified according to the aliens' instructions. Its crystalline structures reconfigured to channel and focus the energies that would be released during the merger. And through it all, the new universe continued to evolve around them, growing more complex and yet more unstable with each passing day. Strange phenomena manifested with increasing frequency. Temporal distortions that caused minutes to stretch into hours or compress into seconds. Spatial anomalies that warped the very fabric of reality. And occasionally, glimpses of what appeared to be shadows of the original universe bleeding through the thinning barriers between realities. Finally, on the eve of the deadline set by the continuum, everything was ready. The quantum scaffold had been constructed, a shimmering web of energy that permeated the reset chamber and extended outward into the surrounding space. The modifications to the reset mechanism were complete, transforming it from a simple button into a complex interface designed to channel Elias's consciousness into the quantum matrix. And the duplicate of Elias's mind had been created, stored in a crystalline structure that the continuum had provided. The process had been painless, but profoundly unsettling. The sensation of having his very essence copied and contained. Of knowing that a version of himself existed outside his own awareness. Now, as he stood before the modified reset mechanism, Elias felt a strange calm descend upon him. Whatever happened next, he had done everything in his power to fix his mistake. to find a solution that didn't simply erase one reality in favor of another. "Are you ready?" Sentinel asked, its form now a pure, brilliant light that illuminated the chamber from within. "As ready as I'll ever be." Elias replied with a grim smile. "What do I need to do?" "Place your hands on the interface," Sentinel instructed. "Open your mind to the quantum field. The continuum will initiate the scaffold, and I will guide your consciousness through the merger process." Elias approached the pedestal, which now bore little resemblance to its original form. The button had been replaced by a complex array of crystalline structures that seemed to shift and flow like liquid glass. He placed his hands on the cool, smooth surface and felt an immediate resonance, as if the very atoms of his body were aligning with some greater pattern. "Remember," Sentinel said, its voice seeming to come from everywhere and nowhere. "The success of the merger depends on your ability to hold both realities in your mind simultaneously. You must be the bridge, the connector that allows the quantum information to flow and integrate." Elias nodded, closing his eyes to better focus on the sensations flowing through him. "I'm ready," he said again, with more conviction this time. He felt rather than saw the continuum activate the quantum scaffold. A wave of energy washed over him, through him, connecting him to a vast network of possibilities that extended beyond his comprehension. His consciousness expanded, reaching outward into the fabric of the new reality while simultaneously touching the remnants of the old. And suddenly, he remembered not just his own life, his own experiences, but countless others. The memories of trillions of beings across the original universe flooded into his mind, their joys and sorrows, their triumphs and failures, their loves and losses, the collective history of a reality that had existed for billions of years. Compressed into a single, overwhelming moment of connection, Elias gasped, nearly overwhelmed by the influx of information. But Sentinel was there, its presence a steady anchor in the storm of awareness. "Focus," it urged. "Find the patterns, the commonalities. Look for the threads that can be woven together." With tremendous effort, Elias began to sort through the chaos, to identify the fundamental structures that underlay both realities. The laws of physics, the constants of nature, the basic building blocks of existence. These were the framework around which all else was constructed. He visualized these elements not as abstract concepts, but as tangible structures, pieces of a vast cosmic puzzle that needed to be fitted together. Where the pieces from the old reality matched those from the new, he merged them seamlessly. Where they differed, he sought compromises, adaptations that would allow both to coexist in a stable configuration. The process was exhausting, demanding every ounce of his concentration and will. Time lost all meaning as he worked, manipulating quantum probabilities on a scale beyond imagination. At times, he felt his identity slipping, dissolving into the greater pattern he was helping to create. At other times, he was hyper-aware of his own existence, a single point of consciousness in an infinite sea of possibility. And then, just as he feared he could maintain the connection no longer, something shifted. The separate streams of quantum information began to flow together of their own accord, finding natural points of convergence and harmony. The merger, once initiated, was becoming self-sustaining. "It's working." Sentinel's voice came to him, distant yet clear. "The realities are integrating. The continuum confirms that the quantum scaffold is holding." Relief washed over Elias, followed by a wave of exhaustion so profound that he felt his consciousness beginning to fade. He had given everything he had to the process, and now his strength was failing. "Stay with us, Elias," Sentinel urged. "The most critical phase is approaching. The final integration requires your conscious guidance." Elias tried to respond, to summon one last reserve of energy, but the darkness at the edges of his awareness was growing, threatening to engulf him completely. In that moment of weakness, he felt something else enter his consciousness, a presence that was both familiar and alien. The duplicate, the quantum copy of his mind, was reaching out, offering its strength, its untapped resources. Elias hesitated for a fraction of a second, then accepted the connection, allowing the duplicate to merge with his fading consciousness. Energy surged through him, revitalizing his awareness. But it was more than just a renewal of strength. The merger with the duplicate brought new perspectives, new insights that Elias had not considered before. Together, they were more than the sum of their parts, a meta-consciousness that could perceive the universe in ways neither could alone. With this enhanced awareness, Elias guided the final phase of the reality merger. He watched as the quantum probabilities collapsed into a single, coherent pattern, a new universe that contained elements of the old, yet was uniquely its own creation. And as the process completed, as the last threads of quantum information wove themselves into the fabric of the new reality, Elias felt himself falling, his consciousness contracting from its expanded state back into the confines of a single human mind. He opened his eyes to find himself still standing at the pedestal, his hands still resting on the crystalline interface, but the chamber around him had changed. The stark, utilitarian design of the facility had been replaced by something more organic, more integrated with the fabric of reality itself. The walls seemed to breathe, to pulse with an inner life that had not been present before. And beyond the chamber, through a viewport that had not existed previously, he could see a universe transformed. Stars shone with a new clarity, their light more vibrant, more alive. Nebulae swirled in patterns that spoke of deliberate design rather than random chance. And in the distance, he could make out the faint outlines of what appeared to be planets, new worlds forming in a universe reborn. "We did it," he whispered, his voice hoarse with exhaustion. "It worked." "Yes," Sentinel confirmed, its form now a perfect sphere of light hovering before him. "The merger is complete. The new reality is stable, integrating elements of both the original universe and the one you created after the reset." "And the continuum, did they get what they wanted?" "They have their void spaces, their embassies between dimensions. They are satisfied with the outcome." Elias stepped away from the pedestal, his legs unsteady. "And what about Earth? My friends? Sophia, Kai, are they?" "Some aspects of the original reality have been restored," Sentinel acknowledged. "But not all. The merger was not a perfect recreation of what was lost, but a synthesis, a new beginning." "So they might exist, but not exactly as they were before?" "It's possible. The merged reality contains echoes of all that existed in the original universe. Those echoes may have coalesced into forms recognizable to you, but they would not be identical to the people you knew. They would be new versions, shaped by the different conditions of this reality." A bittersweet hope filled Elias. Not a complete restoration, then, but perhaps a second chance, an opportunity to find new connections, new relationships in this reborn universe. "What happens now?" he asked, turning to face Sentinel fully. "Now," Sentinel replied, its light dimming slightly. My purpose is fulfilled. The reset has been managed, the merger completed. I must return to dormancy until needed again. You're leaving? Elias couldn't hide his dismay. Throughout this impossible journey, Sentinel had been his guide, his support, perhaps even his friend. My existence is tied to the reset mechanism. Sentinel explained. With its purpose now transformed, I too must change. But I will not be gone entirely. A part of me will remain, integrated into the new reality, just as aspects of your consciousness now permeate the universe. Before Elias could respond, the chamber around them began to shift once more, its walls becoming transparent to reveal a vista of stars and swirling nebulae. The facility itself was changing, transforming from an isolated research station into something more organic, more connected to the fabric of space-time. The facility is adapting to its new role. Sentinel observed. It is becoming a nexus, a point of connection between the various aspects of the merged reality, including the void spaces where the continuum dwells. And my role in all this? Elias asked. What am I supposed to do now? That, Sentinel said, its light brightening once more, is for you to decide. You have helped create a new universe, Elias Novak. Now you must find your place within it. With those words, Sentinel's form began to dissolve, its light fragmenting into countless particles that spread outward, merging with the surrounding reality until nothing remained but a faint glow that seemed to permeate everything. Elias stood alone in the transformed chamber, contemplating the universe he had helped to create. Not a perfect restoration of what had been lost, not a continuation of the flawed reality he had inadvertently created, but something new, a synthesis, a second chance. He turned toward what had once been the exit of the chamber, now transformed into an open portal that seemed to lead directly into space. Yet, somehow, he knew he could step through it safely. That the laws of physics in this new reality would protect him, perhaps even respond to his will to some degree. With a deep breath, Elias stepped through the portal and into the waiting universe. The future was unwritten, the possibilities endless. And somewhere out there, perhaps he would find echoes of what he had lost, not identical, but familiar enough to ease the ache of absence. Well, he murmured to himself as he gazed at the starscape spreading before him. Nobody told me the reset button would erase the universe, but nobody told me I'd get to help build a new one either. With that thought to sustain him, Elias Novak set out to explore the universe he had both destroyed and helped to recreate. His steps light with the knowledge that even the most catastrophic mistakes could sometimes lead to unexpected new beginnings.